How's everybody doing? I am tired and I'm ready for Sunday. Feels like we've just crossed the desert. We've made it out to the other end. Finally, some of the nonsense put the rest today. I'm happy about that as far as the 49ers quarterback situation goes. But the problem is that the nonsense got so nonsensical that Kyle Shanahan now wants to point out how nonsensical it was, so he doesn't want to fully answer the question. Just funny how circularly that's all worked. But then Jimmy Garoppolo did the honors for him, and Jimmy Garoppolo said that I guess it's official. I'm the starting quarterback now. I mean, it's only been obvious for weeks and months, or however long you want to put it. I tweeted that this has been the ultimate case of people hearing what they want to hear. So if you wanted Jimmy Garoppolo to be the starter, well, then you just heard Kyle Shanahan at face value. And even if that was confirmation bias, it was correct confirmation bias. It overlapped with the truth. But if you're one of those people that was just so dead set on getting Garoppolo out and you wanted Trey Lance to be the starter, then you would basically pick the tiniest 2% of what Kyle Shanahan said and blow it up to confirm your priors, to confirm what you want it to be true. I mean, that is the very definition of confirmation bias. And that's how this monster was created, where people were taking the tiniest little pieces of information from Kyle Shanahan that may or may not have been relevant at all to Trey Lance potentially starting. They weren't relevant at all. Like a spoiler alert right there. And then turning them into something that ended up being confirmation bias. We saw the same thing happen, but with the media in the whole pre-draft process, where the media was using confirmation bias to pat themselves on the back and say, "Oh, the 49ers are going to pick Mac Jones. We know better than Kyle Shanahan." So this time it was fans and I guess some media too, but just people in general. It's time to stop, separating the two. This is just people in general running toward a viewpoint that they want to be true, that they've somehow determined is going to be true, and just only putting on goggles and only looking for the evidence that might confirm it. So that it creates an echo chamber, right? The echo chamber gets louder and louder if you're only bouncing your pieces of evidence up against it. So we had Mac Jones for sure going to the 49ers at number 3 way back in April. Then we had, oh my God, Trey Lance makes one throw. He's for sure going to be starting for the 49ers right now in August and September. Lo and behold, not going to happen. Kyle Shanahan's quote today, I'll read it. Question was, I know you've said that you don't have to name a quarterback until you have to. Is quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo the starting quarterback on Sunday? Kyle Shanahan, quote, I'm not going to answer that because I feel like all you guys have to do is look at how I've talked since July 27th. I think that was my opening day press conference of training camp. I almost wish I wasn't being hard-headed with it, but I feel like you guys are being a little hard-headed to keep asking. I feel like I've already answered it, so we'll keep it at that. And Kyle is right. He absolutely has answered who the starting quarterback is going to be. He hasn't stooped down to the level of making an announcement when he doesn't need to make an announcement, but he's definitely answered who the starting quarterback is going to be. And that's where we have to have some critical processing skills, some critical thinking when we listen to these press conferences. And, we can rewind all the way to right after the trade was made. Obviously the trade happened. The 49ers spent a ton of capital to move up to number 3. Yes, one of the initial reactions of any critical observer should be, are they going to keep Jimmy Garoppolo? What does this mean for Jimmy Garoppolo's future? Well, within hours of the trade happening, maybe even within minutes, I forgot what it was, came our first statement from John Lynch or Kyle Shanahan to a media member saying, Jimmy is here to stay. Should we have believed them blindly? No, we don't believe them blindly. We think, though, why would they say this? And at the time, we weren't sure who the 49ers would draft, but you know me, I predicted that the 49ers would pick Trey Lance. And then the puzzle pieces started coming together, even before the 49ers picked Trey Lance, but when I thought it looked like they would. And after they did, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch stayed the course with their messaging. And it was completely congruent with the fact that Trey Lance was a player out of the FCS, the lower division of college football, who'd only attempted 317 career passes, 287 of which came 2 years ago in 2019. I mean, think about that. This is the NFL, the National Football League, the highest of high levels where intricacy, precision, speed, I mean, everything is as difficult as it gets. I mean, this is jacking up the difficulty settings to all pro. And you're going to tell me that the 49ers are going to enter a season with a guy coming from FCS football who made almost all of his college throws 2 years ago, and they're just going to throw him in cold turkey. They're going to get rid of their starter who took him to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. I mean, do you realize how ridiculous that sounds? And then, that's just the zoomed out truth of the situation. Trey Lance, in my opinion, was fully deserving of all that the 49ers traded up to get him, because what I see is moldable clay. With Trey Lance, I see a player who's been exposed to the pocket passing intricacies of the NFL already in college. So the 49ers were able to make a confident projection on his abilities. And he also has supernatural athleticism. Kyle Shanahan finally has the best of both worlds to work with, but it's a pile of clay right now. He's got to mold the clay. And guess what? Trey Lance is such a fast learner that Kyle's been able to mold enough clay to where he confidently on August 6th said, I'm going to be able to run two quarterbacks. I'm going to be able to use Trey Lance in game situations in his rookie season. That is a major, major win, not only for Trey Lance, but for the 49ers. The fact that you could take a guy with, again, only 317 throws at the FCS level, 287 of which came 2 years ago, and he picked stuff up quickly enough and impressed quickly enough to give his coach confidence that he'd be able to use him to contribute at the NFL level on August 6th of his first training camp. That is what should be celebrated here. It's unfair to Trey Lance. It has been unfair to Trey Lance to throw these completely comical expectations of, oh my God, he's going to come in and he's going to start from day one. All he has to do is make one deep throw against the twos in training camp, and we're going to crown him. It's unfair to the process and Trey Lance to think that. Again, this is the NFL. This is the now. I just talked to Randy Cross for a big piece we have running in The Athletic tomorrow about the history of two quarterback systems. I mean, the 49ers have done this throughout their history. In the 60s, they had Billy Kilmer and John Brodie. The 49ers invented the shotgun back in the 1960s when they were running a multi-QB system. Joe Montana broke into the league running red zone packages under Bill Walsh, with Steve DeBerg being the incumbent starter quarterback. Obviously, Joe Montana and Steve Young was the most famous quarterback controversy of all time. And then you had Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick. So this is embedded in the 49ers history. But talking to Randy Cross, who was an offensive lineman for two of those situations, for the DeBerg Montana and then the Montana Young situations, he very plainly said, this is the church of now. That was his quote. This is the church of now. The 49ers don't want to mess with something that they know can get them on the precipice of winning a championship. And that's what the situation with Jimmy Garoppolo clearly is. Like it or not, he's undervalued by a lot of you folks on social media. And so Randy said that they'd be crazy to mess with that, but they can augment it. Of course they can augment it, just like Bill Walsh augmented his offenses, first with Joe Montana and then with Steve Young. And I think Bill knew what he was doing. So this is a situation of augmentation, and that is what should be celebrated, because Trey Lance, his role should only grow. He needs game reps, and the 49ers need to give him game reps. But because they're operating in the church of now, because they've maximized their roster to win this season, they're trying to win a Super Bowl, they cannot afford giving him game reps like the Buffalo Bills gave game reps to Josh Allen 2 years ago and finished 6-10. The 49ers are trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to win a Super Bowl here in 2021, and they're trying to get Trey's feet wet here in 2021. So Kyle's going to try to go on separate tracks, and he's going to try to get both things to happen. He thinks Trey can contribute. He thinks he could spoon feed him a little bit, work on his pocket passing abilities, and simultaneously get benefit from Trey. And I think most of that's going to happen in the run game for the 49ers early on. The basis of Kyle Shanahan's offense is the run game. Only the 49ers and the Baltimore Ravens over the past couple years have run over 50% of the time. So the basis is what you do on the ground. Everything else of the 49ers operate, branches off of that stem. The stem is the run game, play action, the pass game, everything else branches off of that stem. With Trey's speed and with his ability to throw too when he comes into the game, I think the 49ers can completely butcher and compromise opposing defensive formations in the way that Kyle Shanahan hasn't been able to do up to this point. So, for example, Joe Staley talked about it on KMBR the other day. Defensive ends are going to have a hell of a time preparing for this because you could start taking some of the principles and concepts that the Baltimore Ravens use to make life really hard on opponents, but you combine it because you're using Lance to put that kind of strain on defenses, but you combine it with a good pocket passing presence in Jimmy Garoppolo. And most of all, you are linking it all together with Kyle Shanahan's creativity. So that's all part of the 49ers plan right here. And they could start stressing defenses in new ways, and they can make sure that run game is so productive that all of the branches that come from that stem are even more productive in turn. So Trey Lance is here to help the 49ers spearhead their run game. Now, I don't know if he's going to play on Sunday. I'll tell you what, I think the fact that the brace was off at practice today, Wednesday, and he was throwing some nice little spirals and warm-ups, I guarantee you that created a few headaches in Detroit's practice facility today. The defensive staff does not want Trey Lance to be available. Kyle Shanahan wants him to be available, and even if Trey Lance is not going to be available, Kyle Shanahan's not going to leak that secret out sooner than he has to. Because at the very least, this is a preparation nightmare for opposing teams. So you could see the value of two quarterbacks for the 49ers because just the threat of one, the one that brings the new skill set to the table, and Trey Lance, even if he's not fully ready to deliver and make 30 to 35 decisions per game from the pocket, that's what you have to do at the NFL level. You have to make 30 to 35 good decisions per game from the pocket. And also that, that might not even be counting some of the pre-snap decisions you have to make at the line of scrimmage, whether or not to leverage or audible into run or pass. That's the kind of stuff the 49ers, when Jimmy Garoppolo is healthy, they've been able to count on him to be an efficient quarterback at. So even if Trey Lance is not ready to make all those, and Kyle Shanahan saying that he's not ready to make 30 to 35 decisions per game, he needs to refine that ability. He's ready to contribute in another way. And the 49ers now have two of these guys. And if they can meld them together appropriately, they can take the offense to a new level. And even if Trey is not yet healthy enough to play on Sunday, Shanahan still sees the potential benefit of wasting the Detroit Lions time practicing for Trey Lance because he brings a different skill set to the table. So, yeah, this is a good one right here. Kyle's playing chess with this whole situation with the media. He's not beating me. You can tell Kyle right now. I'm happily playing chess back and forth. I'm not trying to be adversarial about this. I'm just here to explain what Kyle Shanahan may be thinking and they analyze it. And I do think he's playing chess. And, I think I could see the value of some of these moves that are happening. But that's the situation, guys. I don't know how else we can put it. I went through the timetable of how this has gone. The 49ers all the way up through OTAs, all the way to training camp, all the way to that July 27th date that Kyle Shanahan cited today, had made every single indication. The messaging was so consistent that this was their plan, down to the fact that they were even non-verbally signaling it. Look at how the 49ers structured the salary cap situation this year. Look at all the veteran salary exceptions they did. They played limbo. They're bending over backwards to fit under the cap with one-year deals for veterans that you only sign when you're trying to win the Super Bowl this year, just so they could fit Jimmy Garoppolo's $25 or $26 million salary on the books. Money talks. Follow the money, and you'll see the truth in a lot of this world, especially in the football world when a team is up against the salary cap. So, again, the 49ers went out of their way to make sure that Jimmy Garoppolo would be on this team. They also went out of the way to make sure Trey Lance would be on this team. And that tells you only one thing, that they want both of these guys to play. in 2021. That's why I don't think that this is this hard. Okay, enough about the quarterback situation. If you have a question about it, go ahead and shoot, but I'm going to answer some other ones. Jalen Hurd officially to IR, not yet, but I think it's going to happen. And this is something I predicted on an earlier YouTube live. I mean, this is another thing. I don't just parrot everything that Kyle Shanahan says. I'm the one that asked him, is Jalen Hurd going to be full go last week? And Kyle said, yeah, I think so. And I'm the first one that came to Twitter and said, I don't really believe Kyle here. And Kyle, in that situation, had every reason to fib a little bit because, again, he wants the Detroit Lions to prepare for all possibilities, including the possibilities that aren't actually possibilities. And that one of those is Jalen Hurd. He's another versatile player that can change your offense if he's healthy, right? So, of course, it was in Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers' interest to tell me, oh, yeah, I think Jalen Hurd's going to be full go after a few practices next week. But I didn't believe him, and I put that out there. I said it on the video here. I wrote it in The Athletic, wherever you want to put it. I didn't believe him because I watch what's going on with my own eyes, and I process what's going on with my own brain. And what I saw against the Raiders was a Jalen Hurd that is not the Jalen Hurd that we saw 2 years ago. That was a rusty player that I think is still not 100%, but who had to go through a crash test just to make the 53-man roster. 49ers told him, you're playing or we're cutting you, waiving you. And so Jalen Hurd played. He survived the crash test, but he's still hurting and he's still not 100%. I mean, he was running routes short of the first down marker. He was dropping passes. I mean, he didn't look fast. He didn't look physical. I don't think he looked good against the Raiders, put it that way. But I still believe that Jalen Hurd can look good. After all, he's only about a year removed from an ACL tear, and a lot of players have knee tendonitis and some knee issues a year removed from an ACL tear. And the 49ers realized that. They had to make sure that he could survive the crash test. They put him on the 53-man roster. They have flexibility, and guess what? IR is not a death knell now. You could put Jalen Hurd on IR, and that just means 3 weeks off, at least, and then you bring him back whenever he's feeling healthy and ready to go. So the 49ers earned flexibility, and maybe they bought flexibility with a Jalen Hurd situation, and we'll see where it goes. And again, yeah, the writing's on the wall, but IR is fine. There's nothing wrong with IR. This was, again, right after that Raiders game, I came on here and said Jalen Hurd doesn't look right. But Shanahan wants him on the roster. He wanted that flexibility. Was there an opportunity cost for carrying Jalen Hurd on the roster? Maybe. Maybe the 49ers carry Simba Webster instead. But if they really wanted to carry Simba Webster, they would have carried Simba Webster on the 53-man roster. It wasn't worth that much to them. They were able to get Travis Benjamin on the practice squad. I think that they're going to have Ayuk returning punts at some point this season. Carrying Jalen Hurd on the 53-man roster wasn't that big of an opportunity cost trade-off for the 49ers. I think it's as simple as that. Now they could stash him on IR. I mean, it's like Jason Verrett. If they give up on that guy right away in 2019, he looked terrible when he first came back. You don't get the 2020, you don't get the potential 2021 from him. So you could find a way to stash some of these talented players that may be able to give you something down the road. If you could fit him under the cap, if you could fit him on the roster through some of these maneuvers, there isn't that much downside to it. People act like it's going to destroy the football team by keeping this guy in the building, allowing him to keep rehabbing, when the reality is the 49ers have kind of wiggled their way around this in a way that's not really destructive to anything else. So let's just see what happens. More questions. Come on, let's get them out here. I have to scroll up through these. I'm going to go back to this. Of course, you can compare DeBerg and Montana to this. You can make comparisons at all times, and you can point out how the current situation is different than the comparisons. Guys, this is not a black and white situation. Not everything is black and white. Everybody wants to make things black and white. Unless somebody has a carbon copy comparison for something, they throw it out. They're like, oh, that doesn't count because it was different in some way. That is not critical thinking. That's stupid thinking. That's not intelligent. Let's put it that way. Intelligence is found in gray areas, okay? So you could see that Walsh integrated Montana, a quarterback who's very mobile, especially for his time, in the red zone and in plus 50 territory, while DeBerg, the traditional pocket passer, was the veteran starter. Of course, you can compare Trey Lance working in red zone situations plus 50 while Garoppolo is the pocket passing veteran starter. Of course, you can make that comparison. And you can also turn around and say, but yeah, they spent a lot more for Trey Lance. And yeah, Trey Lance is a lot more athletic than Joe Montana was. And yeah, it's 40 years later. It's a completely different era. So we need to take all those factors into account. You can do all of these things simultaneously, but you would be a complete fool to just throw out all comparisons because there's not a carbon copy. Then you would never be able to make a comparison because there is no carbon copy to what's happening right now. But if we are smart observers of history, we look at the 1960 situation, which is so far away that it's not as relevant. But we look at the Bird Montana. We look at Montana Young and the psychological warfare that Bill Walsh was putting his players through. We look at Kaepernick, Alex Smith, and we can take history, mold it, and shape it and view it from the correct lens and from the correct perspective. And we can understand what Kyle Shanahan might be trying to do moving forward, or at least use it as an assistant. But to completely throw stuff away and say you can't compare something because it's different is just throwing away a gold mine. History tells us what may or may not work, and we have our brains so we can sift through what is and isn't relevant. So that's, nuance is so important. And again, this is from the same person, but Trey Lance is, he's a guy that the combination of Lance and Garoppolo is what gives the headache. It's not. Detroit doesn't know who to prepare for because they know that the 49ers may do what they did against the Raiders. They're going to come at you from different angles and different down and distance situations, different points of leverage. And that is what adds extra preparation time for an opposing defense. So by looking at this in a binary fashion, you can't be, Lance is the one giving him a headache, he should play. No, it's the combination of both that is making for a lot of extra prep time for opposing coaches. I absolutely expect Trey Lance to get some snaps in the red zone if he's healthy enough to play on Sunday. And that's all that I know. Today he looked nice throwing the football in warm-ups, but I don't know much beyond that. All right, a few more. Sherfield or Jennings are both, they both made the roster, Trent Sherfield and Jawan Jennings. Trent Sherfield is a special teams ace. You're going to see him on all 4 special teams units for the 49ers on Sunday. And guess what? Jawan Jennings is going to be active too because Jalen Hurd is not going to be active. That's very apparent right now. And in all likelihood, you'll have Jalen Hurd on IR before that game on Sunday. So Jawan Jennings and Mohamed Sanu are your 2 big slot receivers for the 49ers. I got to see Trey in warm-ups today, and in fact, I could show you a little bit of Trey right now in a video through Twitter. Actually, I'll do a picture-in-picture YouTube video. Why don't we do that? Share the screen here, and we'll get to watch some Trey Lance. Here you guys go. Make it big. And play it. Well, now it's buffering. That's great. We'll wait a little bit to get that to work. But you could see right there here. You could see Trey doesn't have on his right hand, doesn't have the splint anymore. And, he looked totally normal. And here it goes. My internet must be slow or something because it's not quite running yet. But he looked completely normal. The ball was coming out the way that it did before. We don't get to see team drills during the season. So I think by limited in practice, the 49ers meant to say that Trey Lance probably didn't participate in team drills, so he wouldn't risk hitting his hand on somebody's helmet again. Here he is. It's finally loaded. Maybe we won't get this to work, but you can go on my YouTube channel, which you're already on right now, and you could watch this. But this is Trey Lance throwing the ball, running back and forth. But I don't think he participated in team drills. That would be my guess. I'm just going to give up on that for now. And he looked good in warm-ups. I mean, he was doing his footwork without the ball last week, and this week he had the ball. So Lance looked fine. I think they're going to bring Travis Benjamin up from the practice squad because Hurd is redundant at this point. You have Mohamed Sanu, Juwan Jennings, and Jalen Hurd as your big slots on the active roster, 53-man. So now you could bring up more of a return specialist, and that's Travis Benjamin. So I would think he would be up. And then you wonder, which of the 6 wide receivers will not be dressed on Sunday. So I guess it theoretically could be Jennings if they just want to leave all the big slot responsibilities to Mohamed Sanu. But a lot of that's going to be based on matchup. I mean, and also maybe based on Brandon Ayuk's health and readiness to return punts, because if you don't need to bring Travis Benjamin up, then you're much more likely, I think, to double up on the big slot position with Juwan Jennings and with Mohamed Sanu. So we'll see. Nice hair. Oh, nice. Oh, that's Morel. Old high school friend Morel. It's like, who's the hell is complimenting my hair? Do I see Debo overtaking Ayuk in terms of targets this year? I'm guessing this is a fantasy football question from Morel. He was a good football player back in the day. This guy won a Valley Championship playing on both lines from Mount Whitney High School back in 2006. So shout out to the guy answering the question. I really don't know. It's going to be a health question here. I mean, if Debo is healthy and Ayuk is not, then Debo will have more. I think it's going to be fairly egalitarian. I think it's going to be relatively even if you give both guys 17 games or both guys 15 games, because it's a yin and yang kind of situation, right? You have Debo Samuel as the, more bruising kind of yards after the catch type, and you have Brandon Ayuk as the slipperier type. But the best thing for Ayuk, as I wrote today on The Athletic, is he's added 10 pounds. And I think that's exciting for the 49ers. Now you're starting to think, what if Dante Pettis, what if Kyle Shanahan had Dante Pettis, but a physical version of Dante Pettis? And I think that could be Brandon Ayuk. He was already physical last year, but 10 more pounds. I think he's got more of that bulldog mentality. He's still slippery like Dante Pettis. He's got that bounce to him. He's got that elusiveness. But you add the physicality on top of that. He's never going to be Debo Samuel, but if you have a physical version of Dante Pettis, that would be the ideal Kyle Shanahan receiver, and I think that's what he's trying to get from Brandon Ayuk. So sorry to not really answer your question, but if both are healthy, I would go with Ayuk, just in terms of targets, because I think Debo's going to have a lot of runs. But sometimes they call those, score those runs as passes because they're forward pitches. So you got to keep that in mind too if you're playing fantasy football. All right, guys, time for me to go. Coming up this week, I'm going to be talking a lot about the 49ers and Detroit matchup. I'm going to start studying a lot of Detroit tonight. I've had a lot of stuff going on here, so I'm just getting caught up on Detroit. Going to study a lot of Detroit. Come back for a YouTube video. Subscribe. Make sure you subscribe so you're ready for when I come back to break down the 49ers and Detroit. But how to get one in here. 49ers and the Lions coming up, but with that quarterback situation, I guess finally resolved, whatever you want to put it. If people were just looking at the quarterback situation through the wrong lens, that's why it's so tiring and so confusing. People would just see that this was a collaborative process the whole way. If they would just look at the facts and the logic of the situation, it wouldn't have become so adversarial. And so many more people would not have been wrong about it. It was such an unnecessary thing to be wrong about when the 49ers were so clearly collaborative about this. So I'm glad that we can move on and actually start talking about football games, start talking about some X's and O's, start talking about the matchups. That's what I'm going to do next time when I come on to preview the 49ers and the Lions. Everybody have a great Wednesday night.